So thank you very much for coming to this second day of the Diaspora Development Dialogue. My name is Marie-Charlotte Tatepon-Gonde, and I'm the Communication and Engagement Manager at ADYFE. I'm very happy to be part of this organization because, you know, there's exciting things going on and there's going to be more for the years to come. This DDD is very special for us because it's the first time we're holding it online. Usually we have it in a European or an African city. So we're very, very happy to have you all here present for this digital event. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Fridah Ntarangwi-Kimathi. She's the founder and executive director of ZidiCircle, one of our dear partners. And she's going to be leading the discussion for this third panel on private and public partnerships. Fridah, you have the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'm very delighted to be here, and I greet you all. So today we are here to discuss a very important topic about public-private partnerships. And I think the diasporans are here in full swing, especially the diaspora organizations, to get more information and find out how they can leverage on partnerships to move forward. So for years, public-private partnerships have been viewed by some as silver bullets for development programs, in particular as they allow for larger and easier access to finance, technology, skills, as well as investment opportunities, to name a few. In addition to regular obstacles such as high transaction costs or lengthy implementation period, public-private partnerships present particular challenges for diasporas. The existence of an enabling environment that facilitates diaspora investment of accessible and viable investment and financial support products, such as diaspora boards, are among the potential limiting factors to diaspora engagement. Another key factor for success in this respect is trust, and notably, of course, within the governments. Examples of successful public-private partnerships or schemes involving diaspora institutions exist, such as the Liberian Diaspora Social Investment Fund, which is a very good case study, that was established by the Kana Group and the Liberian Professional Network, and financed by both the diaspora and Moderator institutions to channel remittances to the diaspora towards investments in SMEs in Liberia. And to help, of course, fight poverty and create jobs in a sustainable manner. So in this panel discussion, barriers to entry into public-private partnerships for diaspora organizations will be examined, as well as the various drivers of engagement, successes achieved so far on the African continent in terms of development opportunities ahead. So with me today, we have a panel, and we have very, very experienced speakers, including Rion Isaacs, and I'll introduce each one of them so that we know their background. Rion is the founder and executive director or officer of DMA Global, the specialist international development company that he founded in 2007. He is a seasoned expert and business leader in the payments and international development fields, with a particular expertise in migrant remittances. He has over 30 years hands-on experience. And Leon was the managing director of the International Association of Money Transfer Networks, where he interacted with numerous regulators and stakeholders to present the industry. He was a member of the UK government remittances task force between 2005 and 2010. He is an observer to the G20 Consultative Committee in the public-private sector partnership on remittances. And Leon has spoken at and chaired numerous international conferences on remittances, including at the World Bank, the United Nations, and the G8. Prior to establishing DMAG, he was involved in 2 successful startup remittances businesses. So Rion, if you're here, can you wave to the group so that they are aware of who you are? And I will then move on to the next speaker, who is Stephen Gelb. And Stephen is a principal researcher in federal and lead on private sector development at ODI in London. He has a PhD in economics and has taught in postgraduate, sorry for that. Yeah, he has a PhD in economics, yes, and has taught postgraduate economics, political science and development studies in South Africa, Canada, and US and Switzerland. He did research and policy analysis in South Africa for 30 years, advising President Thabo Mbeki, the National Treasury, and other departments of the democratic government on issues including inclusive growth, macroeconomics policy, and public expenditure, international investment policy, and African economic policy. He worked at the Development Bank of Southern Africa and was the founder and director of EDGE Institute, an independent policy research institute in Johannesburg. He has consulted for multilateral organizations and national governments and has written widely on South African economic and political issues, on foreign direct investment and global value chains, on African economic development, and the links, of course, between migration and development and other topics. So Stephen, if you're there, please, can you wave to our audience so that they can at least know the face? And obviously, we really appreciate all this experience that we're going to run from. We have Onyekachi Wambu, a former newspaper editor and television producer at the BBC and PBS. He is the current director of a fund, which has been very instrumental and is a charity that seeks to enhance the contribution that Africans in the diaspora make to African development. A fund is a pioneer and innovator in the field of policy and practice of diaspora development, responding to the disjuncture between mainstream international development and actual diaspora action. Our fund's advocacy work under this is leadership has contributed to the UK and international recognition in the role of the diaspora in Africa, in African international development, and in the subsequent initiation of new policies, programs, funds, schemes, and by global institutions such as the European Union, the African Union, DFID, World Bank, IOM, Comic Relief, JSN, and many others. So Onyekachi has a lot of experience that we can leverage on today. Onyekachi, if you can please wave your hand to the audience so that they know you. I believe you've done so. And lastly, we have Lamin, who is the current Ministry of Health Permanent Secretary and former Ministry of Trade Permanent Secretary in Gambia. So if the PS is here, please could you wave to the crowd so that at least they can know you. And thank you very much for finding time to be here with us. So I think we will move straight to the discussion today. And obviously we are looking forward to hearing more. I think I'll start with Onyekachi Wambu from our fund. And Onyekachi, you have lent a effort towards contributing to United Kingdoms and international recognition of the role of the diaspora in the African and international development, and in the subsequent initiation of new policies, programs, funds, and schemes by global institutions such as the European Union, African Union, and all the other partners, including the World Bank, IOM. What are the key, the enabling and limiting factors to African diaspora organizations' involvement in public-private partnerships? And what are the key factors for success? Onyekachi, if you can hear me, I hope you are not muted.
Thank you, I was muted. Thank you for reminding me. Good morning, and thank you, Fridah. And and thank you to ADYFE for the invitation for this to participate in this conference. I think in answering your question, I think it's important to say that obviously the most enabling thing that can be done in terms of the environment is the policy framework. And I think it's important to go back to looking at what the landscape was like over 20 years ago, where there were very little policy in place to begin a conversation or an engagement about how public-private partnerships could work out or could be effective. Over the last 20 years, that landscape has changed drastically as more countries, both here and in the countries of residence and also in the countries of origin, have understood the importance of diaspora contributions in finance, skills, tech and cultural transfer, and that these contributions have become more widely acknowledged. And I'll give a very small example about why these public-private partnerships are so essential and why it's important to remove some of the obstacles that are in place. If we take Nigeria as an example, my own country of heritage, the amount officially remitted through financial systems in 2018 was about $22 billion, which was a little bit higher than the entire federal budget. That's the federal budget that does everything in Nigeria, from constructing the roads, capital investments, education, health, everything. So the diaspora remittances were unmatched with those amounts of the entire federal budget. And those remittances of 22 billion were 7 times the total ODA budget to Nigeria, which was in that year of about $3.3 billion. So you can see that why countries are looking at how to exercise this. Of course, over the last 20 years, the policy framework has changed at a number of different levels. And I think when we discuss these public-private partnerships, we should discuss them in terms of those levels. So, in terms of countries of residence, the UK has launched a number of initiatives, Diaspora Volunteering Initiative, Common Ground Initiative that looked at how it could work in 3 areas, diaspora finance, tech, and also gender, working with women and girls. The SDC is currently funding a number of programs, one in Gambia and then a program with us at Afford called the ABC West Africa program, which is looking at how the diaspora can support SMEs in 4 countries across Africa. GIZ has multiple programs. And so there are a lot of countries are now put in place different initiatives. And then at a pan-European level, ADYFE itself has been funded in terms of policy as a legacy project of the action plan of the joint Africa-EU strategy, and then the various migration, mobility, and employment partnerships between the EU and Africa, and then the ICMPD are also being funded to undertake this EU ADYFE program, which is global, but Africa is a significant component of that. At the Pan-African level, the policy framework has improved dramatically. The AU has enshrined the 6th region. CEDA has been established, the AU arm to reach out to the diaspora. And then, and that everything has been mainstreamed and incorporated into the AU's Agenda 2063 agenda. And then at the global level, we know that diaspora is now enshrined in the SDGs, the Compact on Migration, and also the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. So we can see that the policy framework has changed. So the policies are there, but what are the challenges? I think these are twofold for me, and in terms of looking at the practice and trying to implement and design and operationalize what are kind of huge and grand ambitions and aspirations that are sometimes contained in some of these policies. So for me, the challenges are twofold. And this is making distinctions in how to support, or in these policies are making distinctions in how to support the diaspora at two levels. One is the diaspora acting socially, where diaspora pools its resources, puts in place scalable diaspora initiatives that can then be enacted. So one of that, could be, ADEPT, for instance, an organization like ADEPT, trying to bring together different diaspora organizations to implement different programs. And how does the policy framework and the governments and others in the public sphere work with private and the diaspora to create what I'm actually now, and my colleague Jabbi has dubbed the PPD, which is private public diaspora partnerships. So there's that level of the pooled and the social and the scalable diaspora initiatives. And then the other level is, most of what happens with the diaspora is at the individual diaspora peer-to-peer level with various initiatives happening there. So how do you add value or provide incentives to those individual diaspora peer-to-peer initiatives? So for me, there's policy interventions and real focus or real scope for action from different governments at those two levels. And each of those require very precise policy interventions, which are not always clearly understood. And then beyond this, there are other challenges, and I'll be very brief with these challenges. And these are the kind of practical things that we have discovered trying to implement our programs and working in partnership with others. So many of the policies are simply inert. They just kind of lie on shelves, really, and remain broadly aspirations. So how do we make these active? How do we make them kind of useful for all of us? We need proper scalable instruments or programs, and these have not been developed, piloted, or tested, and we need to be doing that rather than just looking and saying, okay, we have a policy framework. I think we need to go to the next stage in these public-private partnerships to begin to test them. There's a tendency to continually research and over-research diaspora contributions rather than gather real-life data from actual implementation of pilots and projects. So I think there's something really kind of useful in this. And the reasons for this, I think, go to the heart of this. I mean, there was a point raised earlier on in the introduction by Fridah, which talked about trust. And I think there is a sense that it's not just trust. I think it's really also a misconception of how to work with the diaspora, because the real value of the diaspora with a lot of government is seen simply as philanthropic or amateur, or, as I said, at that peer-to-peer intervention level. And therefore, there isn't really sometimes a willingness to support this wholesale or to incentivize or invest in it, and those actors who are who are creating those diaspora interventions. The importance of foreign direct investment, FDIs, is understood to different economies, is understood by economies in the North, it's understood by economies in Africa and in the South. So when FDI is considered, there are a lot of the investors get so many incentives, and they're taken very seriously. So everything from tax breaks and tax holidays, access to land, targeted investment missions. There's a kind of ecosystem that creates a way of working with those investors, looking at what their needs are and really responding to them. And governments go to a great deal of length to do that. Whereas if we go back to how important in the context of the Nigerian economy, say, the remittances are, that same attention, I don't think we're getting for what I would begin to talk about, and we've been talking about it before, and we're calling DDI as opposed to FDI, which is Diaspora Direct Investment. So the same attention is not paid to that. We're seen as philanthropic, as amateur, and not really investors. And so the financial instruments that might actually encourage investment, the kinds of incentives that could be given to individual and other investors are not there and put in place. There's also a lack of boldness or creativity, and I would add to that also risk-taken over structured diaspora interventions, whether investment, volunteering, or skill sharing. I'll mention one very small area in that. The UK and other European governments are now aggressively recruiting in Africa healthcare from African healthcare workers, and they're recruiting from very fragile health systems. People will migrate as a result of those appeals. Individuals migrate, and we probably shouldn't get involved in that. They have very complex and multiple reasons for the migration. But it seems to me that if you're now going to threaten very fragile health systems, that are very structured and bold, and there's need for very structured and bold creative thinking around how we support those services to retrieve some of the skills of their nationals who have left in a very structured program of skill sharing or volunteering or something else that can be done at perhaps at the NHS level, the National Health Service level in the UK, or within other health systems across Europe. So some bold thinking, some risk-taking, and some creativity is really needed. And then on the diaspora side, I think some of the obstacles are our own sometimes reluctance to pool our skills and resources for impact. The fact that we are not investing as much. It would help if we had support from our governments here and there, in countries of residence and in the countries of heritage, to upgrade our skills and build our capacities and for them to invest in us. But we're certainly also not doing that as a kind of joint enterprise. And then I think we also need, as a diaspora, to define much more clearly what our immediate, medium, and long-term priorities for joint action should be, and then also look at how we can work to doing that. I would just end by saying that, you know, despite some of those obstacles, I think there's some really bold and exciting developments that are going to happen. If the last 20 years were about setting the policy framework, I think the next 20 years are going to be about action, and you're going to see some other really incredible developments coming in, whether it's diaspora bonds or other instruments that are going to be alluded to. And one bold action that I can really talk about that is exciting me at the moment, and I think will profoundly change the landscape and suggest ways of how this might be done, is what's happening at the Pan-African level. And it's the development of the African Diaspora Finance Corporation, which is now just going through to be ratified by the heads of state. We hope by next year it will be established. It's an African Union legacy project, and what it aims to do is to harness diaspora investment, innovative finance, and social to support social enterprise in Africa. We can talk a little bit more about some of the components during the question and answer, but I think I'll stop there and hand back. But I think that's going to be a really, really interesting program once it's established, and we'll probably have the scale that we are looking at, and hopefully the impact as well, to show, to begin to demonstrate how the DDI and other diaspora philanthropy and skill sharing can have a massive impact on the continent. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Onyekachi. I think you touched on very great points here, and I think those that are even dear to my heart, because I think it's not fair not just for governments in the African continent, but also for other development institutions and also actually the foreign governments, or where we live as diaspora, to not recognize some of the initiatives. And of course, I always tell my friends, and also I think in conferences I've been saying this, that there's a huge financial muscle within the diaspora. And just looking at Nigeria being able to have 7 folds of of the national budget into just remittances, but then when it comes to coming on the table and talking about this particular group and this kind of financial muscle, it's not the same. So I've been saying that there's a misconception between the reality on the ground and actually the diaspora themselves, because every government, not just in Africa, but all over the world where diaspora come from, look at the diaspora as a financial muscle. But they always look at it as a receiving end. We have to receive these remittances from the diaspora, but we do not really care to create an infrastructure that makes, for example, investment practical, that creates incentives, that creates guarantee funds, for example. So Onyekachi, I think we can continue this discussion, but I really hope we have participants from the African Union, especially because we are talking about the African Diaspora Finance Corporation, because I think we need to keep being on the table and discussing these issues so that we really have a full cup rather than always being left at a quarter of the cup. So I will move to the next panelist that we have, Lamin. Lamin, I hope you're there and unmuted. And Lamin, before becoming the Gambian Ministry of Health Permanent Secretary, you have been the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Trade. And I think we are really looking forward to hearing your points on the public-private partnerships, especially given your experience. And the question is, should such public-private arrangements involving the African diaspora and notably African diaspora organization be generalized for Africa's development? And if so, why and how can we do this? Lamin? Is Ram? I actually cannot see him. Lamin, are you there? It seems not, because I cannot see him anymore. But we can move on to Rion. I can see Rion is very eagerly waiting to talk. And of course, Rion will be leaving us a bit earlier than the program, because he has another engagement. So I'll ask him his question, and then of course I'll ask him to give at least 3 recommendations. So Rion, prior to running DMA Global, a consultancy specializing in improving environments for payment systems, remittances, and diaspora investments, you have been managing director of the International Organization Association of Money Transfer Networks, and you have therefore a lot of wealth of experience as regards to diaspora finance. So besides their role as financial capital provider, what role can the African diaspora play in public-private schemes? And I think after that, then I'll ask you to give us recommendations as you close. Thank you very much, Rion.
Great, thank you, Fridah, and good morning to everyone, wherever you may be. Thanks to Onyekachi, who, of course, has covered a lot of ground there, and I think some of the answers I might have given you've probably covered, so I might go into a little bit more detail. But just to sort of say, of course, there are many ways, and we're very familiar, I think, with a lot of them, that the diaspora can really contribute apart from their hard cash. And I think your point, Fridah, that you just made is also equally valid, that of course in many ways the diaspora is still looked at as a cash cow for countries, albeit that in quite an unformalized way, given that they're private flows of funds at the end of the day. Just before I do that, I just wanted to pick up on one point Onyekachi made, if that's okay, which was around the point about there's been an too much research, if you like, and not enough hard data on the contribution of diasporans to a country's development. And I couldn't agree more. I would say that, as we know, data is quite hard to come by. I'm always impressed by the faith people put in remittances data, for instance, given that it's an approximation based on an estimate, based on some other factors. But having said that, just to say there is an initiative that's underway at the moment to try and actually calculate more around the actual contribution of the diaspora beyond just remittances. So including things like their contribution to investment, trade, philanthropy, tourism, and so on. So there are some efforts being made, and I think that might help, because one of the big challenges we have is that the full value that the diaspora pays or adds to a country is not really known. And I think if we could measure that more effectively, then that might change some minds, which might bring more political will to actually introduce some of the changes that we were talked about. So anyway, I think just having said that, in terms of the ways that diaspora can contribute apart from hard cash, I think I've sort of looked at this in a number of areas, but particularly around things like helping governments to build and design financial products that are really, particularly those that are targeted at the diaspora. If we look at the moment in the diaspora finance world, it's all driven from a government end, and often it comes down to let's issue a diaspora bond or let's try and do something. But there's very little that's actually done by saying, how do we bring the voice of the diaspora into this? How do we know exactly what the diasporans want? How do we know what skills they could provide to do it? Are we bringing the diaspora in to actually design these products in a way that diasporans themselves would actually find them attractive and then would actually use them? Can we bring skills back into the country to help, not just in that area, but in lots of areas? Let's look at the diaspora as a resource that are basically on the same side of us, not as a group of people that might have left the country a while ago that are actually, we're not sure if we trust them. I mean, again, Onyekachi mentioned trust. I think trust is so important, but it always seems to be that governments are suggesting and proposing things on their terms and not really opening the proper dialogue with the countries, with the diaspora, to actually then be able to contribute to the development of the country. And so I think, the role for the diaspora is to work closely with, and I totally take the point, this is not easy, but is to be much more prominent in helping to design solutions and ideas, to be much more prominent in raising awareness of opportunities, but with the appropriate caveats, between the government and the rest of the diaspora. Again, sorry, Onyekachi, you made so many good points. I'm just trying not to repeat them all, but actually, one of the things we see is that often diaspora activities are either relatively low scale or actually at an individual or small community level, which is great. But actually what we need is more organization and more promotion of the awareness around particular product designs, particular initiatives, to get support from a broader base within the diaspora. This is something that I think the diaspora can lead more. It needs political will from the country of origin to basically say, we want to actually allow the diaspora to be drivers of change in certain elements of our country. But that has to be a two-way partnership, obviously. So for me, a lot of this, and I was just looking at, say, a tool like diaspora bonds, which I know, is still quite common. If you look at all the different ways that product could actually get to market, diaspora could be involved from the very beginning of the conception of the idea to the design of the product, to help with the licensing in foreign countries that are needed, to provide information to the rest of the diaspora, to actually help educate other diasporans about how these products or initiatives work, what the risks are, what the protections are, and so on, to share their skills with other groups so that you can build up the institutional capabilities in the government. And then other areas not connected, if you move to other examples, particularly the entrepreneurship areas, we're very familiar with mentoring and so on. And actually, funnily enough, one of the benefits of COVID, if I can use that term, it sounds odd saying that, one of the catalysts there is that the use of technology has now made it much easier for people to connect. So things like mentoring, online training, remote training, and so on are actually all things that the diaspora can do to help their communities at home. So for me, there's a lot of different things, many of which have been talked about before, but I think we're now starting in certain cases to see actual developments in those areas. Some of the challenges really, particularly around the non-financial world, are organizational, identifying the different skills that are out there, identifying the programs and then bringing them together, because there's a lot of good ideas that have been talked about, but it's very much how you implement those in in the fullness of time, really, to be able to actually achieve something on the ground and turn a concept into an idea. So for me, all of those areas where there's so many areas that the diaspora can help, but it's actually a lot about starting with political will and then organization and openness from governments, organization and openness from diaspora groups, creating the forums, which this type of event does, to actually be able to bring people together and share those ideas. So perhaps I should stop there, because I see that even with one of our participants not being here, we're in danger of overrunning already. He's there. So I'll stop there if that's okay, Fridah, and hand back to you.
Thank you, Rion, and really it was short and precise, because you mentioned very key elements that are non-financial, I think looking beyond the remittances. And for example, what you mentioned in education, and I think one of the points that I got personally was sometimes you have programs that are low scale, so to speak, but some of them are low scale because there's no sometimes financial muscle to run these projects. Sometimes there's no awareness. You mentioned that, which is very, very important. And I think that's where now we need partners. That's why we are talking about this topic, to make sure that a lot of people and a lot of organizations come on board. I'll mention quickly about two programs that we have been running at ZidiCircle. And one of them, of course, is the Entrepreneurship Program. First of all, empowering diaspora themselves so that they understand entrepreneurship and be able to launch businesses both in their host countries and countries of origin. But what we realized is that when we send them home to their countries of origin, they got stranded. So it's trying to bridge the gap and bring in also mobilize entrepreneurs locally so that they work together. And instead of a diaspora trying to duplicate or invent the wheel, probably some of those ideas are already in the countries of origin, but try to partner and do this. I have to say, because the other program that we have is an investment program. We call it the Venture Backers Program, where we have trained diaspora investors, give them an angel investing course, organize them in investment groups, in an investment cooperative for them to be able to invest. I have to say that these programs took off because we had very strategic partners from the private sector who either the IOM, of course, is in the development world, and also SNV from the Netherlands, which is a development organization. So please, what Rion is saying is very, very true. There's a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot of skills. Diaspora can mentor, but it's not organized. It's not structured. Resources must be pumped for this kind of these resources to be tapped. So let's take note of this very well. So I'll move on, and thank you very much, Rion, because I know you have to learn, but we'll keep talking. And obviously we'll share also your contacts with the audience so that they can follow up. So I'm going to move on to Stephen. Of course, time needs to be, my clock is moving faster than I can talk. So let's move on to Stephen Gelb. I'm saying Gelb because of the Netherlands, but maybe I don't know how you pronounce the second name, Stephen, I'm sorry for that. But Stephen, you are consultant for multilateral organizations and national governments, and has written extensively on foreign direct investments, on African economic development, on link between migration and development, in particular on diaspora finance for development. How do you ensure a level playing field in terms of power, notably between the different partners in public-private partnerships involving African diaspora organizations? How do you balance? I think this is more on also how do you manage the relationships so that you can be able to move forward or at least see productivity. Stephen?
Thanks very much, Fridah, and thanks to ADYFE for inviting me to participate. My name, by the way, is pronounced Gelb. It's a German origin name, not so with a hard G. Yeah, look, I think that the issue of power is very important, but we need to put, I think, the issue of power within these different partnerships in the context of the benefits and the costs that are involved in these different diaspora investment and diaspora finance schemes, because power can lead to an unequal distribution of the benefits and unfair burden in terms of who's carrying the costs. In my work on foreign direct investment, actually, which I bring to my work, which is much more recent on diaspora finance, but when we look at foreign direct investment, there is a lot of emphasis on the benefits, often not so much emphasis on the costs that different parties are bringing to bear. But I think what we need to really remember all the time is, particularly when it comes to diaspora finance, that the situation has to be, in some sense, a win-win situation for all the parties, because people are putting their funds, particularly the individual investors that Onyekachi referred to, they're putting their money into this scheme or that scheme voluntarily. They are looking to get a return on their money. It's part of their savings, part of their their wealth accumulation. So unless they're going to get some benefits from that, they're not going to be willing to do that. At the same time, there need to be benefits on the side of the recipient of the funds, because without that, the point of the diaspora investment is not really achieved. That is, to contribute to economic and wider development in the country of origin, or the heritage country. So really, these schemes are ones that really require cooperation, even though interests aren't always 100% aligned, and we need to try to remember that. Having said that, though, I would say that picking up on some of the points that have already been made by Onyekachi and Leon, what's very important is to try to understand better what are the benefits that are being achieved, not just by the investors, those who are providing the finance, but in some ways, much more importantly, in the country of origin, by the beneficiaries directly and by other groups and individuals within that country. And we don't really understand fully, I think. I know Onyekachi said there's too much research. I'm a researcher, so I like it when there's too much research. But actually, we do need a lot more research on what the impact is on development of different diaspora finance mechanisms. I recently completed, in collaboration with colleagues at the European Commission, a sort of survey, literature survey of diaspora investment and diaspora finance schemes. And we identified over 300 of these schemes, which relied on different sorts of mechanisms. And this was just doing a Google search of not just academic and research literature, but also of marketing literature for these schemes, of organizational reports and so on. But what we found is that although we could identify many, many schemes, over 300, as I say, involving more than 95 countries as recipients, there was very little analysis of what the impact of those schemes was, what the actual benefits were. And so I think that we do need actually a lot more research to on an individual scheme basis, because there's huge differences between these schemes. So one can't sort of generalize from a few to all of them. We've got to look at the specific mechanisms and arrangements to understand what the benefits might be. We need that sort of research. What we also need, I think, is, and this is something that Leon mentioned, but it's certainly something that we emphasized very strongly in our report, and which we're now trying to push the European Commission to support, and that is we need much more systematic collection of data about what kinds of diaspora finance schemes there are, how much money is being collected, who's involved, and so on. At the moment, you know, the picture is, I think, very hazy. We know there's a lot going on, but we don't know in any sort of precise way. And so we do need to, if you like, count much more systematically how much money is going beyond remittances in other forms of diaspora finance. And that will, I think, as I think Leon said, and perhaps Onyekachi as well, that's very important to raise the profile of the issue of diaspora finance on the political agenda, both for governments in countries of origin, but in some ways even more significantly for governments in countries of residence, because I think they can play a much bigger role than they are now in promoting and supporting diaspora finance flows. I think that actually in the wake of COVID, and because of concerns, justified or not, about migration, European governments are now much more interested in diaspora finance and in how that can contribute to development in countries of origin and perhaps mitigate the level of migration. But they don't yet, I think, see, in my understanding anyway, they don't yet see diaspora organizations in their own countries as critical agents of promoting that those flows of diaspora finance. And if we can get better data, count the amounts of funds that are going, and also identify what the impacts are of those funds, I think that will raise the issue up the political priority agenda in some important ways. Lastly, let me say though that we need to count, but we don't need to only to count. We need to do much more than count how much money is going. And this again, I think, is a very important lesson that I bring from my work on foreign direct investment. In foreign direct investment, there's a lot of emphasis on how much money is coming in, but actually what is not counted in anything like the same way is the amount of knowledge, the skills, the technology transfer, and so on, which is much harder to measure. And that's not seen as particularly important. Often it will be smaller amounts of money that are bringing bigger quantums of knowledge, technology, and skills to a country which it needs. For example, in business services or in financial markets expertise. When a bank invests in another country, it's not necessarily investing a large amount of money, but it's bringing important knowledge and technology and skills to financial system development and regulation in the country to which it's moving. In the same way, I think we've got to think in diaspora finance, not just about how much money, but also look at how much knowledge is going. And there, I think the role is, the main role has to be taken by the governments of the countries of origin and their investment promotion and facilitation agencies, who need to look not only at how much money they're bringing in, but also what are the benefits, how they're optimizing the benefits and minimizing the costs. So I think there's a role, just to wrap up, I think there's a role for both agencies in the country of origin, but also agencies in countries of residence to look at diaspora finance much more closely and help to develop a much more systematic way of both measuring it, what's flowing in terms of, in financial terms, but also optimizing the benefits of that financial, of the financial flow in terms of knowledge flows, which are also, of course, potentially two-way from countries of origin back to countries of residence. That also needs to be thought about. I'll leave it there. Thank you. You're on mute, Fridah.
Yes. Okay. I believe I am now. Okay. So thank you very much, Stephen. Obviously, I think you mentioned very, very important points that are usually overlooked, you know, the benefits and the cost. And I think when we are at the table negotiating or looking at partnerships, I think it's always good to look at the both ways. Who is the ultimate beneficiary? Who is the implementer of this initiative? Where are the resources coming in? And yeah, who is benefiting? Who is bearing the cost? Because I think most of the projects that I've looked at involving the diaspora, most of them are not sustainable. And that's why I think Leon was saying they are low scale activities, you know, because they are not planned with you know, with a lot of detail to continuation in the future. And obviously, I think the other important point is impact measurement. And I'm happy, Stephen, you mentioned non-financial benefits, because most of the time everybody looking at the, you know, the money coming in, the numbers in terms of money, but not all the other benefits coming along. So because we are running out of time, I'm not going to keep talking, but I'm going to invite Lamin. I understand Lamin is now here with us. And Lamin, I know before you joined the ministry as the permanent secretary for health, you were the permanent secretary for trade. And I think you've seen more public-private arrangements than in one of us here. I think governments are the ones doing so much, a lot of collaboration. So should such public-private arrangements involving the African diaspora and notably African diaspora organizations be generalized for Africa's development? And if so, why and how?
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Good morning to everyone. And I'm happy to join you. Sorry, I was not able to respond to most of your emails because of my busy schedule. In fact, I'm just coming from a trip around the country to see, to visit some of our health facilities, you know, because we win a lot of investment trying to strengthen the health facilities, especially those in the rural areas. But I'm happy to be part of this discussion today. As you said, I was in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. That's where I spent most part of my professional career. Spent almost about 20 years and working there before becoming a permanent secretary. I think the topic is very timely and is very, very important, especially now that a lot of African countries are looking at diaspora as a very important resources. And a good number of countries are trying to find ways and means of tapping those resources to be able to change the development dynamics in the various countries. But it's going to be very difficult to generalize it because it is not uniform across the continent. Because if you look at countries, the diasporas in different coming from different countries have different skill sets, and that makes their contributions also different. And also you have some countries that do not still have specific programs where they can be able to utilize the resources of the diaspora. Like Gambia is one of the a country in case we didn't have any. It's just recently that we're developing specific programs to be able to engage them in a more constructive discussions, and also to see how best we can be able to leverage whatever resources that the Gambian diasporas are putting in the economy. If you look at the contribution of the diasporans, the Gambian diasporans in the Gambian economy is about 26%. But most of these inflow, goes to the construction, the real estate industry. That's where most of the resources goes to, because that's where, but that investment is easy to manage, unlike most of other areas. I think the second most important area where the resources from the diaspora is going into is the SMEs, the small petty trade, and supplies here and there. That's another area where it is going to. But since the change of government in 2017, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has created a department focusing on diaspora. Although it's not been very active until recently, that we've seen a lot of diaspora engagement. About 2 weeks ago, we had a similar discussions like this with the Gambian diasporas all over Europe and America, to have an engagement that will keep them much closer to home, and also finding ways and means of how we can create various schemes that will attract them so that they can be able to invest their resources. But the challenge that we still continue to have is that, like someone mentioned, the diaspora bond. This is not still developed in the Gambia. It's still a lot of debates is going on in terms of to establish a diaspora bond so that it could be a means of financing some of the projects that we have at home here, so that diasporas can also be able to contribute to investment, especially in projects, development projects in the Gambia. Then, and I think the other issue is that the Gambia diaspora in the Gambia and the government of the Gambia, has not been very much engaging each other very well, because there has been a suspicion between the two sides. You remember that during the time of the former president, because diasporans were seen mainly as opposition, that they belong to the opposition camp. And because of them, they have been isolated. They have not been used as much as we could. And this is why they have been they have even been disfranchised. They don't participate in the electoral process. And up to now, they still not participate in the electoral process, because that distrust still exists. Even with the current change of government, they have been seen mainly as an opposition camp, and not being properly utilized. But what we have also been seeing recently, since the change of government, we've seen the skill diasporans are, organizing themselves into different camps, providing services to the people of this country, like the medical professionals. We have been receiving a good number of medical professionals in the Gambia that lives in America and in Europe, organizing themselves, providing medical camps, surgical camps in the Gambia here, free of services across the country. And this is becoming very frequent now. We've seen in them, coming and going very, very often now. Then that is gradually changing the dynamics. At least you see the skill manpower that lives in the diaspora, trying to contribute to the development of the Gambia. And I think if And I've also been looking at the programs like Liberia and Mauritius and other countries that are really, you know, they have very good programs that is helping them to be able to tap the skills and also the resources from the diaspora, you know, in the economic development. And I think there is a lot of lessons that we can learn from each other, that various countries in Africa can be able to learn from each other in terms of how do we engage diaspora and how do we leverage diaspora and expertise and their resources in economic development. I want to stop here for now. Thank you. You are muted.
Yes, thank you. I always forget as well. Sorry for that. So thank you very much, Mr. Dampha. I think you touch on very key issues, and it's very nice that we have a government talking from Zambia, because I think all the time you're on the receiving end, and no one is here to arrange and to respond. And indeed, you know, there are a lot of challenges, especially here you mentioned about trust. If I don't trust the electoral process, sometimes I do not trust you with my money. So those are the issues that they struggle with, but we are really happy to see that the governments are also trying to create that trust and to create an enabling environment for the diaspora. So I really want to thank you for finding time to come. We will keep engaging in the coming months and years to make sure that the situation changes. I believe you're very right, and we send you now to the African Union members, because you mentioned a very important point of, you know, running from each other as governments. And I think each one of you has done really well in some areas. Maybe some have done well in investments, tapping diaspora investments, have done well in getting skills. I think everybody has organized themselves in a different way, but we can only move forward if we try to move and learn from each other. So thank you very much, and pass our greetings. So because of time, we really have to move forward. I was looking at the questions that there were, and I believe Wambu, you can answer this one quickly, because I cannot see your answer. I think you're trying to answer it, but the question was, well, you made the point that and mentioned how the diaspora could be involved in investment development and volunteering in something that our fund has been doing for some time now. And Elvina wanted you to comment on the realities of doing these things and what can be put in place to assist. I don't know if you did the answer, but you can answer very quickly.
Well, there are a lot of challenges. I put in the Q&A box a report on our volunteering program that we did with Fridah, which captures, I mean, there are a lot of issues, which captures the experiences that we had with that. I think one of those is finding, you know, working with the partners on the ground and who you're going to be supporting, and the group being very clear about what that support is going to represent. And then on this side, when you're recruiting your diaspora experts, to ensure that they're going to go in partnerships and not necessarily going to instruct, which is something that tends to be a problem, that they're going there to learn as well. So to get this partnership about exchange, so they'll learn as much from volunteering and giving to Africa as they will receive from volunteering and giving to Africa. So those things are quite important. Doing a skills audit of the diaspora is also very important, so that we know that the intervention is going to be appropriate. On the investment side, we're currently working on trying to launch a diaspora bond that will finance affordable housing in Sierra Leone. So that's been a challenge, just getting the partnerships from the private sector in terms of the investors, from also the diaspora itself, and also from governments. But you know, there are a number of issues. It's very complex and needs a whole kind of event on its own, or to be able to look at that in some detail. But in terms of small scale investors, the key thing, I posted something on that, is to do with trust. People want to know that if they send their money to their relatives or however else they're engaging at the moment, they have a way of ensuring accountability with their relatives. But if they're sending it to an organization or to an investment package, they want to make sure that it does what it says on the tin, and that they will get their investment back. And how you do that is very slow. You build trust very, very slowly. Somebody said that trust arrives in a go-kart and flees in a Porsche or Ferrari. And so you have to build it very slowly. You have to deliver on what you're saying that you're doing. And just to go back to a point that Stephen made, I wasn't against data collection. The reason I was actually promoting piloting and small scale projects is that that's the best and most reliable data that you're going to get, that it's not based on aspirations, it's based on reality of what people are doing. And we need to be doing more of those and taking the risk to look at those projects. Some of them will fail, but we will learn a lot more than just asking people, are you willing to volunteer, are you willing to do this? And people will make lots of commitments that sometimes they won't fulfill. But if you actually have a project and you recruit them, then they've gone the next stage, and you can then actually test what's happening and get some real life data. So that was the point that I was making. It wasn't, I'm not like, like you.
Thank you.
I work on data.
Onyekachi, I know that you aren't against research, although sometimes research can become a substitute for action. I totally agree, though, that there need to be pilots, and when they are, and they have, of course, there are hundreds of pilots in a way, because there are many different schemes. But what hasn't been done is to set up adequate study of those schemes while they're unfolding, to understand what their impact is, how that impact can be improved. In other words, more benefits, lower costs, and how they can be scaled up, which I think is also a point that you mentioned and is very important. I also just want to reiterate Onyekachi's point that he just made about skills audits. I think this is very, very important. And it seems to me that there's some responsibility on the part of the governments of the countries of residence, I mean the European governments, including the British government, to support and assist this in their own interests. I mean, the UK, to give a specific example, the UK government has been saying for some years that they want to promote financial investment from the UK into African countries, and particularly from the City of London. And I tried for quite a long time and with a lot of effort to get them to support a project which would do a skills audit of African diaspora people working in the City of London, of whom there are hundreds, if not thousands, working in the different financial institutions, who could play a role, as Onyekachi said in his original input. And they just didn't, the UK government, differed at the time, did not see the benefit of actually using the diaspora sitting in the City of London to promote, assist, and find technically the solutions to enhancing flows to those people's countries of origin. So a skills audit, I think, would be a very beneficial exercise for these governments in Europe to undertake of their diasporas.
So thank you very much, Stephen. I believe also the second question was answered. I think Onyekachi answered it, because it was about trust, and I think you said we have to build it over time. So we've come to the end of this panel, and it has been a really great pleasure to be here with you guys. And I think we have to thank our panelists, Stephen, Onyekachi, Rion Reft, and Mr. Dampha. Thank you very much for finding time to be here with us, and obviously to our audience for really being with us for 1 hour, 15 minutes. So thank you very much. And I wish we can connect. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fridah, for this great moderation, and thank you to all the panelists. Thank you as well to the audience. There is a poll actually that is about to launch right now, so you can give us your feedback about this exchange, you know, to let us know how useful the information presented was for you. We're going to be having a short break of 50 minutes before we return for the peer-to-peer exchange. Alors, on va revenir dans voilà, 15 minutes pour un échange entre pairs. Donc, nous allons avoir une pause de 15 minutes et nous vous demandons de bien vouloir donc répondre à ce sondage qui est visible à présent sur l'écran pour nous donner votre feedback et nous aider à nous améliorer donc pour vous proposer encore des meilleurs échanges par la suite. Merci et on se retrouve donc à 11h30.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you indeed for a great job that you've been delivering since yesterday. I'm happy to be part of this conference. I'm happy to be part of ADYFE, of course. I will dive right away to the next discussion. And I would start by recognizing that at the very start of the diaspora discourse, we most of the time talked about diaspora operating as individuals. They did all they could to support their individual families. When it came to investment, they did individual small investment, probably through family members and so on and so forth. And even then, they did achieve quite a lot. We've already heard from the last panel, the diaspora contribution in terms of finances and so on and so forth. But until a certain point, it was really individual based. The move has changed over time. And at this point, we are talking about harnessing the power of partnership for development. And that is the focus of the next panel. That is to say, what are we looking at? What is there for us to achieve when it comes to diaspora partnering? And this has also been a message that has cut across ADYFE's 13th Diaspora Development Dialogue. Thinking about this topic alone, for me, 3 things pop up in mind from the day we started, from yesterday and today. What cuts across is really the issue of diaspora development and partnership. In other words, it tells me that development is not a one-man show, but it's rather a process that calls for collaboration. Yesterday, we also saw some of the different contributions that diaspora have been able to achieve in different countries of origin while partnering or in partnership with other organizations. This was before COVID, during COVID, and of course, this is ongoing. These contributions are still ongoing. So in this panel, we are going to exchange, or rather our exchange is going to focus on international programs and organizations and aspects of scaling up our partnership. We want to hear and learn from those organizations that have already engaged or engaged in partnership with other international organizations. We want to learn from them. What has been their experience? What has been their achievement? What is the benefit? Are there any shortfalls here and there? And if so, what is the way forward? This is what we are going to talk about. It's basically about strategic partnership and the importance of this. And I hope that many of us who are in diaspora business, diaspora investment, but haven't yet gone into partnership will learn something from this. And to steer that a little bit further, we have put together a team, or at least ADYFE Organizing Committee has put together a team of 3 people representing 3 different organizations that have engaged in this kind of partnership and have seen the benefits and probably the shortfalls also. With me to discuss that today, we have Mbemba, Jabbi, my very good old friend. He is the executive director of Africa Center in Ireland. I like to tease him to say, Mbemba, Africa Center is for you, your baby, it's your child, it's your everything. I mean, it's his heartbeat when he talks about it, and I look forward to hearing what he talks about it. Of course, Mbemba is not only an Irish citizen from the Gambia, but he's also one of those very highly learned and exposed diaspora who has been engaged in development work with non-governmental issues. And we shall hear a little bit more about his works as well. I personally know him, like I've already indicated. He's an academic as well. He's very highly qualified, so to say, with ranging qualifications in development studies, in rural development and management. And perhaps this also explains his engagement in the Gambia and beyond, in as far as issues to do with development, improving the lives of the most vulnerable people back home. I also like to emphasize that Mbemba has traveled quite across the two continents of Africa and Europe. He's been involved in speeches. Every time there is an engagement, a conference or a workshop to deal with diaspora and development, you can almost be sure to find Mbemba there, representing people, contributing, and so on and so forth. He's quite an informed person. And I think that the team did not make any mistake in involving him in this team today. So I won't go into the details of other participants. I will introduce them as they join us on board, but I will go straight away to ask Mbemba to tell us a little bit more about Africa Center in Ireland and their experience partnering with an international organization. Mbemba, the virtual floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Jen. And I think you actually made me blush there. So if I am probably an Irish person, I would say that my skin is actually getting red already. But thanks very much for that introduction. And I think, and ADYFE as well for putting together these discussions. And in relation to the first panel as well, I think this is very timely, as well as to discuss about partnership, because this is where the diaspora engagement is actually going as far as African countries are concerned. To answer your question, like the Africa Center in itself, because it's a membership organization, so there's a lot of range of partnership on the ground, but I'll probably talk about partnership internationally, not in Ireland here. So our partnership has actually evolved in two stages. An UN agency, like IOM in the Gambia, but also with the government of the Gambia, in the Gambia, because we are running 4 main area programs as our strategic objectives. One is to talk about integration of Africans in Ireland, but also we do a lot of advocacy and campaign, policy, information, and practice, but also our Africa program. So the partnership, the 2 examples of partnership is with, one is with the IOM. Last year, we actually, in 2020, even though the COVID has started, it was actually the best year for the Africa Center, in the sense that we were assigned to bring 40 Gambians into Gambia. These are experts, to place them with government institutions. So IOM and ourselves got into partnership. And so unfortunately, we couldn't get the 40. We got 29 Gambians that were placed. But this was also affected by the COVID, the virus, when because it was in March, and that was the time when the lockdown actually started. But the key thing in the partnership is the arrangements, how that was done. So in fact, it was a learning curve for us, because the partnership actually didn't work well, in the sense that we didn't have an MOU, and IOM as a big organization kind of overshadowed the work that we were doing. And I think this was also pointed out in the first panel about power relations. So the activity actually went well as far as the Africa Center is concerned. People were placed for 2 weeks and they went back, they got their per diems, traveling. Some people were stuck for maybe 7 or 8 months, but we have to deal with that. But I think what we learn is that for partnership to work, you need to actually put all the frameworks together. And as we go on, we maybe later on, we go into the details about what steps you need to take in order for the partnership to work, like IOM, who's going to do what, who's in charge of the reporting, who talks to the people you take into the country, which were very like challenging for all of us in terms of during the partnership. The other one is actually with the Gambia government. This is a very interesting part for us as Africa Center and personally myself, because we are actually practicing the PPP, the public-private partnership arrangement in the Gambia, whereby the Africa Center as an NGO is actually working closely with the government of the Gambia. We signed an MOU with the Ministry of Local Government, especially the Department of Community Development. And our office is actually based in the Department of Community Development. So they gave us an office. It's very unusual arrangement because normally NGOs will go into the country to do their own, but we decided not to do that. So we are based there, so they support us in terms of material. But because we don't want to have a lot of staff also on the ground, because this Department of Community Development have staff in every district in the Gambia. So we are going to work towards those district representatives to put across our activities. So ADYFE gave us DTS last year. We actually engaged in capacity development with them. So that partnership actually yield a lot in terms of it's giving us a lot of resources in terms of manpower, but also we were able to access a lot of people on the ground in the community. But also we don't have to go and do a bit of research because already they have identified the area that's people can walk in, and then for us it's like ready-made available to us in terms of what we can do. So these are the two partnerships, but I will go into details later on as other people are introducing themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mbemba. I knew that you do a good job. Thank you for those observations in there, and it already comes out, as I already indicated in my introduction, that yes, partnership is not, it's not a smooth ride, it's not a bed of roses. You already clearly indicated in there that it was a learning process, and that's for me a positive remark. It's a learning process. It's not like we are saying we are getting in there, the bed is well laid and we are going to slumberland. It's of course a learning process, and I'm very eager that we will take on that discussion of a learning process after we've heard from the other panelists as well. I will now jump from West Africa and go right to my direction, Eastern Africa, and learn that I have a love-hate relationship with the Somalia, a beautiful land, beautiful people, but also a very challenging experience to work in that environment. But nevertheless, whereas it's challenging and scary for some of us who are not there, there are people who are daring, and I do acknowledge their contribution there. And I'm talking about HIRDA here, a young organization that was established by a few people daring, and it's grown over time from 1998, it's grown over time, and they're doing a lot of good things there. I was going through their website. I've met some of the people who were behind HIRDA and who are making a difference. They are making a change in the life of vulnerable people there. They've also engaged in partnership, of course, as you, Mbemba, have already disclosed. They are working with government, ensuring ownership of the different programs on the ground. I find the work of HIRDA in the Somalia quite interesting. And the organization, the diaspora organization that does this is actually based in the Netherlands. I like the fact that they work with those who are their target, the local communities. They engage them and they strive to see that they are the people who drive the change themselves, and they act as a link. And to share with us this experience today about their work is my good old friend as well, Abdihakim. You help me pronounce your other name.
My name is Abdihakim.
Abdihakim, oh yes, of course. You see, we have a love-hate relationship. The fact that I can't pronounce the name makes me very unhappy. But yes, nice having you on board. I would right away invite you to give a little introduction, just a little bit more about yourself and your work as HIRDA, as well as your experience partnering with other international organizations. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here with you this morning, and I am happy to be taking part of this conference today with faces are familiar with, especially Mbemba and Youssouf. So it's a great day. Talking about partnership when it comes to HIRDA, it's not also a smooth ride, basically. So we also have we had our own disadvantages and advantages, basically. HIRDA had a lot of partnerships from different years, and up to now we have also still the partnership with international, organizations, especially with UNICEF, Oxfam, Acmea Foundation, and also International Food Agricultural Organization. So basically, we had our advantages and advantages, and those are the things I would like maybe later on to discuss and go deep down into it. And the thing is, today what we're talking about especially is scaling up, basically. Scaling up, my own definition, that is like effort to increase the impact of successful partnership in order to benefit more people, basically, so that we take this partnership from here, from Europe to Africa, back to Somalia, and try to support people who are there to use this partnership in a way that is advantage to them, basically. So we're going to look into that today, and that's basically, and my name is Abdihakim, and I'm a communication officer for HIRDA. Yeah.
Abdihakim, thank you very much for that very, very brief and insightful experience. Again, the message remains, the message cuts across. Partnership is not a smooth ride, but I like the point that you're introducing in there, which is of course going to be the focus of our discussion, that is the issue of scaling up. And then you go ahead to say scaling up. I like your own understanding of scaling up, to say it's about increasing the effort, increasing the impact of this partnership in order to benefit those whom we want to reach, which of course is the drive. Like I indicated at the beginning, that the diaspora started off as individuals. You are targeting your family and probably extended family. I did the same, Mbemba did the same, and each of us did the same. And the time has come that we want to say, we want to go beyond this. We want to go beyond our families. We want to reach out to our communities. But we also are very cognizant with the fact that we are not able to do it on our own. And so we need to call for partnership. Again, what comes to my mind immediately is that it's a two-way ride here. Because when I do it as an African, when I go back home, I have this relationship. The people know me. I identify with the people, so they are probably happy to work with me. But we also have a certain degree of stereotype, or lack of a better word, forgive me. We also tend to believe more with another partner, with the West. So if we have these two partners, two organizations coming together, the one who identifies with the people, can drive the people, understands the culture, the norms and the values, is on the ground, knows how to get things done. And we have a partner who is coming from an outside, with an outside perspective, and the people want to learn, are eager to see what does this person bring on board. I think that we are on the right track. And I'd like now to go to Youssouf, also a good old friend we've met several times. ADEPT is doing a good job to continue bringing us together. So Youssouf Diakite, also a founder and co-chair of ADYFE. ADYFE, he will tell us what ADYFE is in full, so to say, but just to mention another big diaspora organization that is based that has offices or representation in Austria, in Belgium, in France, and of course across Africa. And what of course we've learned now from the COVID experience is that a lot of online presence, much as they already had this before, but I think all of us have seen and learned from the COVID experience that online is something that we are benefiting from. You know, it's given us good times during hard times, so to say. Youssouf, like most of us here, is also a very highly learned people. That makes me believe in education. With a master's degree there in international business management, I think he's the right person to shape things when it comes to investment, diaspora investment there. And I admire him because he's also an international speaker and consultant when it comes to business development and so on. Youssouf has, of course, mentored people in the diaspora. He's an expert on diaspora matters. I mean, ADEPT brings together only expatriates here. So when we bring people to talk, we are not picking just every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but a nice selection of people who have the experience, who have the technical knowledge, who know how to move things here and there. One other thing to note about him is that he has been involved or part of the key people behind the Diaspora Innovation Days in Africa. He is the CEO of Nyeta. I mean, what am I supposed to say here? The CV is longer than my menu on Christmas Day, so I won't go into all that details, but we'll learn from each other. We will make reference to lots of your contributions also during the course of the day. I would like now to invite Youssouf to give us your experience in partnership and scaling up, and then we will take on the debate from that. Youssouf, please.
Thank you, Jane. It's really a pleasure to see you again and being here to discuss about how to scale up partnership with international institutions and government. So I did not know that my CV was so long. Next time I will make sure that I will just put my name because you know really well how to present it. Thank you, and I'm really happy that I'm the last person, introducing this topic. So it's easier for me to leverage on what Mbemba and Abdihakim was saying, about the learning process to the definition of scaling up collaboration. As we say, I'm one of the co-founders of ADYFE. ADYFE is, we say ADYFE because we are living in a German-speaking country. All the words need to be, spelled. So ADYFE is the largest youth network nowadays in Europe. What we do, we focus on 3 pillars: entrepreneurship, employability, and civic engagement. And why do we decide to focus on those 3 pillars? It's really since the beginning to make sure that partnership will be created and that we'll have these possibilities to collaborate with other sectors. For example, if you come to entrepreneurship, we work a lot with organizations like national development agencies, like with the European Commission or the UN institutions. And also, why do we have an office in Brussels and in Vienna? It's also in Paris. It's also part of our strategy to make sure that this collaboration and partnership can be created. We call it the strategical one. We work through strategic partnership, either by developing a project together or by developing like a program for like 1, 2, 3 years. And if I came back to the definition that Abdihakim was giving, it recalled me that a strategic partnership is like a means to get to these scale-up programs. And it's really important for us since the very beginning for each project to have like a key partners, and how we can learn from them to make sure, first of all, they will value the contribution of the diaspora in implementing this common vision. And also diaspora will see the capacity and the skills they will bring together to make sure that this collaboration will be something important. Why do I talk only about strategic partnership? It's because most of the time the diaspora institution like ours lack funding, like Mbemba was mentioning, and also the e-learning process. How did they do the work? Because some international organizations like UN institution, they've been working in those matters like for 50 years or 60 years. So, or even more sometimes. And collaborating with them will help you as well to increase your level of understanding and make sure that there is enough funding mechanism also to carry the project the way you think that those projects will be better implemented, beyond those big institutions. And something I would like to develop with you in the core discussion will be the challenges or limitation and the game power, and also the vision, how we can get like a similar vision to carry joint programs or joint projects. in order to scale up both sides, diaspora organization and institution. And also I would like to mention at the end, the skills contribution, how they each are moving from diaspora institution to international organization, national agency, and other institution. I think I will stop here and let you come back with the specification so that we can develop on some keys, takeaway from this panel and make sure that people will learn something from these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Youssouf, for that insight to your organization and the lots of work that you do there. I do appreciate as a diaspora. While you're still holding the floor, I would like to just take it on with you there. Just take us through the steps of getting into partnership at all, because my own experience working with different diaspora organizations is that it's really a big challenge to not just make a breakthrough operating in a European environment as a diaspora organization, but also to make a breakthrough to penetrate another partner, to get partners. There's always, a question of trust. We heard about it from a different perspective in the previous panel, but also to present yourself there. So you're approaching these gigantic organizations, say UNICEF, any UNICEF institution, UN institution, or IOM, all these big international organizations. And here comes Youssouf with his small ADYFE. And you're saying, hey, look here, I have this idea, which to you is a very brilliant idea. You need to get work done and you want to partner with this gigantic organization. So what steps do you have to follow there? I'm sure there are quite a number of organizations that would want to get into partnership, but are still finding it a challenge or don't know how to approach this. So take us through the process of acquiring partnerships here.
Thank you so much, Jen, for this question. Yeah, I have a very good example, like when I got started working with one of the UN institutions, like 7 years ago. The first thing you need to understand before trying to engage with those organizations is, first of all, the vision of your organization and what do you want to achieve in the next 5 to 6 years. It's quite important because without your own vision and knowing the capacity and the capability your organization has and what you can offer to the other organization, because partnership is also about business. The person needs to see that they can collaborate because you can contribute in any way to the development of what they are doing. And beyond this, you also need to understand what those institutions are doing. What are they doing and how they are doing? This kind of research can take you a lot of meetings and a lot of understanding. Sometimes they will reject you a couple of times, but you have to understand that it's because you did not find your unique point of sale. You have to position yourself as unique in what you are doing in order to make sure that you will have the attention they deserve. So at the beginning, we were going to see them and ask for money. Let's apply this together. They say, but we are not a funding institution. This was the first mistake. Are there a partners? Can you apply together for funding, or they are a funding institution? You need to make the difference first of all. And when we realize that, no, they are not a funding organization, but we can apply, for funding together because we brought a great idea that they cannot implement without us, first of all. Secondly, once you have this frame, you need to understand that it can take like 2-3 years before signing your first good partnership. Why good partnership? I will come to the point very soon. It's because your vision, your experience, and what you want to achieve will be together with what UN knows. You have to leverage on their knowledge and skills and the network they have. So they will do the same with you. But at diaspora, most of the time, you know what you want to achieve. And then applying together means also going to see other partners to make sure that they will give the fund to you, which means also sometimes a lot of discussion. This is the methodology we applied most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that you need to be prepared for 1 to 2 years before getting the first million or $500,000 to start doing a great project. And there are other ways that most of our diaspora organizations are trying to go through. It's like other organizations, I'm not going to mention any name, they will come to you, let partner in doing these projects in Congo or whatever. And then they will tell you what to do. To me, this is not a partnership. This is like you are implementing the idea of someone. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the vision they have and the key performance indicators that will give to you may not be the right for you sometimes, because you know better your country of origin. And mm-hmm. only through going all the process, you will realize that sometimes the key performance indicators those are following are not, can be improved, you know, through, you know, going through all the process with you since the very beginning. And this kind of collaboration sometimes is good, but sometimes it's very dangerous. Why? Because when they came to see you, it means that they have already the vision. They need only the skills you have to achieve a project. And there will be no follow-up after this kind of collaboration. When we started...
Yes, please, go on.
Mm-hmm. When we started, how far are we right now with one of the UN institutions is we move from forums, you know, from cooperation in diaspora to implementing real projects in the rural sectors in Africa. Like 2 weeks ago, I came back from Senegal in the rural sector of Casamance. What we are doing there is building a logistic ecosystem for farmers to and access to market program so that diaspora can take advantage of products and services. And this vision of development wasn't seen by those partners. We brought it on the table. I say, well, you know, I am Malian diaspora. Maybe sometime I want to eat Malian product, but I have to wait my sister flying all the way to bring me those products, or going to Asian shop, which is like a substitution product for me. I'm willing to pay like a little more to get the local product of my region, because first of all, I will give them access to markets, and secondly, I will improve their capacity to invest, to have a better life. And those kind of approach are always good, because this program was designed by all of us, the institution and diaspora organizations, since the very beginning.
Youssouf, you've already talked about what other diaspora organizations need to do, the steps that they need to engage in order, while approaching other international organizations. That's quite a learning process. I also see it. I already take the message home that it's a long journey, it's a long process. But before I ask the next question to the next discussant, I want to just take it on with you there, because both Mbemba and Abdihakim mentioned the issue of, you know, the shortfalls in there, being mindful of your own ideas, being mindful of not being shadowed by the big partner organization. And you said one of the strategies that you use or you apply is to align your vision with that of the partner organization. That means you're coming up with a program together, you align your vision, you know what they are doing, and you just fit in there as partners to drive this. I'd like to ask you this, and please give me quite a brief answer. How do you ensure that you don't end up being overshadowed by the big organization?
Excellent questions. This can happen most of the time if you are not sharing the vision, because a strategic partnership means that we are writing something. There is a framework, there is an MOU, like Mbemba used to say most of the time, and there are all those steps to follow. You know, you need to be also good at that level. You cannot collaborate with them without knowing what is going on. For example, any of our projects that some of our colleagues can witness is, we wrote it, we said, this is the role of diaspora. This will be the role of the international organization. Those are the way to implement the programs and the project. So everyone will get his own budget and follow on what you are meant to do with the money. And the second point is, we apply also as a service provider to some of the programs that those institutions have, like a national agency, UN institution, and we call this program Diaspora Operation plugging initiative, because we cannot lie to ourselves that we can go to Africa and change everything. We need to collaborate with existing programs and projects. And we analyze most of the time those programs and see how we can plug in what diaspora can contribute and how to make sure that those initiatives will be scale up. So Senegal program is that, like UN went there with Germany, JZ, they build the capacity of ladies to produce local products and services. And then there is a lack of market access. We just came after analyzing the situation. We say, okay, we will plug those diaspora entrepreneurs. They are doing great jobs in logistics, in marketplaces creation. Let's create a marketplaces and let's build the capacity of those rural sectors people to be able to understand what does mean marketplaces, what does mean logistics, and how it works. We end up even having the services of some local people to speak in the local languages to them. But we do it really like a joint program. We call it the plugging process also. This also scale up our organization, because our organization was paid to do it. We are able to pay our offices to bring our expertises and to make sure that we are paying salary to our employees as well.
This is a multiplier effect then, because you're bringing in the local communities, they're learning and also getting something to take back home. Very interesting approach there. I do appreciate your work. I'd now like to go to Mbemba. Mbemba, you talked about you working in partnership with the local government, in addition to international organization. You say you're actually housed within the vicinity of local government. The previous session also highlighted the issue of lack of trust between government authorities and diaspora organizations, given the political tensions that might be in different countries. Actually, it was from your own country. The example came from the Gambia, that even with the change of government, we still see there is still a degree of lack of trust between local authorities and the diaspora organizations. I'd like to hear with you, how then are you able to ensure a balanced relationship with local authority as well as the international organizations that you're partnering with, and ensure there is smooth operations? Because at this point, I see then three parties here. You have yourselves as the diaspora organization, you have your partner, which is an international organization, and then you're bringing on board the local authorities. At the same time, you have the communities in there. How do you ensure a balance of working relations among the four partners on board?
Thanks, Jane, for that question. And I think this actually follows on what Youssouf was saying in terms of added value in terms of partnership, because I think our partnership was actually drawn based on added value. Our initial one, which they're all linked, the four, the UN agency, was that they are missing something that we actually put on the table for them. So, and then I think Youssouf actually put it very, very clearly, because they had already got what they wanted to do, but they didn't know how to do it. So we came with the idea of saying that how do we implement this project? But it was not like we team up with them to actually do the application. And I think that's where the disadvantage of the partnership came, even though the implementation happened. But that was actually something, because they had their food cooked already. It's just that how to dish it on the plates and to invite people to eat, that was missing, and we provided that. But for the government one, it's the same thing. Like what we did was, even before signing an MOU with the Ministry of Local Government, the Department of Community Development, we actually carried out an initial assessment, and this was funded by ADYFE. We went in to the country, met with the Vice President's office, the Vice President herself, some of the ministers, and then Lamin, who spoke earlier, was part of that, to actually see what are the government doing, the other NGOs are doing, what can the diaspora do. And it was not actually easy, because as Lamin mentioned, this happened at a time when we had a dictatorship, and then so people were just wondering, what the hell are you actually going to do? Because they actually see you as a political wing to change the government. But we were just telling them, like, no matter what happened, this is a country that we all belongs to, and we want to contribute to the development of the country. So you have to actually make them at ease to say that you are not there to take their jobs, but you are just there to add value. And for the NGOs, we were just telling them, we are not going to implement anything that you are doing because we want to do A, B, C, D. And that's what we have seen that is actually missing. So for the government, because like they don't have problems with funding, they have the staff, but sometimes the implementation is actually a problem. So they have all these nice policies, nice program, but implementation becomes a hurdle. And that's where we came in, because we were just showing them how to do things. And then this is where the diaspora can actually do. We can access funding, we like from international agencies, the EC and others, and then we can work together. And on the ground, at the community level also, the ideas that we were saying, Youssouf mentioned about even transportation, but like storage, knowledge and other things we are missing also on the ground at the community level. So these are what we identify. And I think that actually made the relationship working smoothly, because you have to provide something that is not there already. You have to have the added value. And without that, I think the partnership would be very difficult. So this is what we did. But I also think that, like, I think I need to mention something. Partnership, it's more administrative and practical as well. What Youssouf mentioned, the administrative part of it, if you miss that, it's always difficult. Like to know what your counterparts need, what do you need? But at the end of the day, I think diaspora, we always need to make sure that we put our point across, and then what we want to achieve as well is embedded in the partnership that we want. At the end of the day, we have to like decide and also dictate what sometimes we want, because like some of our thinkings are totally different from international agencies or even the government as well. This is what we can bring on the table, and it actually works for us in the Gambia.
Interesting. Again here, similar message as that of Youssouf, similar experiences there. Of course, you talk about, you again re-emphasize what Youssouf already indicated in his contribution, the issue of presenting a common vision, or rather having a common vision. What value do I bring in as a diaspora organization, as well as aligning that with the partner organization? That's quite important there. You also bring a very important issue that I always find very pertinent in this kind of development work and diaspora involvement there. When you talk about, there was already work in progress. There was something that the international organizations were doing. Government had its stake in there, but they just didn't know how to do it. And here we see that the expertise of the international the international or diaspora organization plays a very key role, because then you're bringing in your technical local expertise, so to say. You understand the environment, you know how things are done, and so you get things. So you add on to what somebody has this competence, I have this competence, we put it together. But one thing that captured my mind is when you talked about, you presented it more or less like there was some bit of resistance from other NGOs for one reason or another, probably fear of they are taking over from us. So there's always a bit of, tension, so to say. Just give us an idea. How do you go about this kind of thing? You're presenting yourself more or less like an NGO working with an international NGO, and there are already NGOs on the ground who are looking at you as a threat, but you have a clear vision. How do you manage to bring these people on board, or to make them understand you're not there to fight them, but you're working towards a common vision? What was your experience like, and how did things finally progress?
I think one of the exercises we did was we actually organized a consultative meeting, and this was facilitated by the Department of Community Development. We brought UN agencies, NGOs, in to say that the Africa Center is coming to the Gambia and we want to establish. What are you guys doing? So we did a brainstorming to identify who is doing what. It was a very interesting, because at some point they were resistant to even say what they are doing, because their other counterparts are there. They don't want to say it. I said, guys, we need to actually work together. But also we brought in, there's an umbrella body of all the NGOs in the Gambia called Tango. So we actually brought them to the scene and said that, listen, at the end of the day, we are going to be members of your association. So we are bringing the diaspora expertise, because there is no diaspora international NGO in the Gambia. So diaspora is supporting, as Lamin mentioned, in terms of investment, building construction, all that, but there's no diaspora in terms of NGO. So we want to come in, but we don't want to implement anything that you guys are doing. We want to facilitate, we can partner. So what are you doing? So we brainstorm on that, they tell us all they are doing. In fact, probably hiding all the things that they are doing, not for us not to know. But based on those things, we then identify where we are going to work. And then we actually identify some of the things that are missing in some of the program. We said, okay, we can actually add value to this. And then that's where the diaspora mentorship actually came as an identification, because they said that actually that's something missing, because government departments need policies, some people need like certain skills missing in the departments or private sector, or even what some NGOs are doing. So I think you need to actually build that confidence to say that you are not there as a competitor, but you are there to facilitate the development process. As my brother Jibril always mentioned in a quote, it doesn't matter who actually did the work, but if development process is actually done in the country where you come from, it's fine. So for us, it doesn't matter whether the Africa Center is doing or not. If we identify somebody else is doing, but at the end of the day, our vision is achieved, this is what development is about. So this is where you have to really build trust with them to make them at ease.
So you're not there to fight for credit. It's about harnessing the value of partnership. And that's, of course, something that I also did highlight at the very introductory part, that development is not a one-man show. I like it that you work towards making the people involved there understand that it's not about credit, it's not about a one-man show, but rather a common vision. And the common vision is we want development, we want better lives for our people. I want to go to Abdihakim. Your operational environment is rather different from Youssouf and from Mbemba. We all know the political scenario, the political situation in Somalia, but nevertheless, you have this long-ranging experience working with international organizations, with International Organization for Migration. You work with the local authorities there, you work with the government in whatever state it is, and you work with the local communities. I mean, Somalia is a unique case for me in terms of culture, religious culture, political culture, and so on. Share with us your experience.
Exactly. You just pointed out what I wanted to go to. Even listening to Mbemba, I think when you look into the problems that NGOs are facing when they want to partnership, when they want to have a partnership, exactly, for example, with HIRDA in Somalia, and they tend to be a problem with culture. There's always a culture clash when it comes to organizational culture clash. Basically, our culture is really mostly connected to Somali culture, basically, how we do and how we work and how we do everything. And the Western organizations have their own culture, basically. So when they need some things to be done and the culture doesn't allow or doesn't give that room to be done, and the culture clash, and then there's a problem, those are the things we have already faced a while back because of the culture clash, basically. So those are one of the biggest elements when it comes to partnership problems. So the only way to deal with this, as Mbemba pointed out, that MOU, when you're trying to get into partnership, basically you have to cover everything there, saying that whenever this happens, that there's people who are responsible when cultures clash or something like that, who are going to solve this sort of problem, basically. That's how we, as a HIRDA, dealt with when it comes to this sort of culture clash and those sort of problems, yeah, basically.
And apart from mechanisms already being put in place on how to solve this, I'm still keen to know how you mentioned at the very beginning, Mbemba, the issue of differences and shortfalls here. How have you been able to, I mean, with your long experience working with long partnering experience here, how have you been able to kind of ensure equal partnership, so to say, just from a German perspective, working at an eye level to ensure that as a diaspora organization, you're still operating at the same eye level with the partners that you're going on, addressing all these challenges and moving it forward. Because reading from what you've done so far, it appears to me that despite the challenges, of course, you're quite successful and you're making a difference here. A little bit more about your journey of challenges and experiences and ensuring that you're not overshadowed and so on, and also trying to regulate and juggling around the difficult dynamics of your operation.
Yeah, I think there's in development itself, there's always a power relations, and then it can go in different angle. Like international NGOs have also a vision because they want to be in a business. So like development work, let's look at it as a business model. Like they won't talk about profits, but they want to stay in the business no matter what happens. And I think this is what we as Africa Center, our mode of operation is that we always said to people that at some point we need to have an exit strategy. The Africa Center is not going to be in the Gambia for I don't know, like 50 or something years, like most NGOs do. That's why, first of all, to get the government buy-in is that we work with you, have this MOU, we use your staff. At the end of the day, Africa Center will pull out, then the government will be responsible, because the development is the responsibility of the government to do as responsibility. So first of all, you actually get them on board, because already you said to them that, like there's no government that wants you to be knocking their door like banners, activism, hey, we are going to do this, you are doing everything wrong all the time. They don't really want that. Because like we have seen that the issue in the Gambia, just to say that like I'm not people say, because like Gambia is where I'm coming from. The Africa Center office in the Gambia is a regional office for West Africa. But I'm talking more about the Gambia because that's where we are setting up in order before we go to other countries. But you need to actually convince the government that you are there to facilitate the process. And one thing that I didn't mention also is that we look at the government national plan of development, because they have this national plan. So based on the national plan, we went to the vice president. Myself and a colleague in the Gambia, we went to the vice president to say, hey, what can we do? Look at the national plan. What do you think Africa Center fits in? We had a lengthy discussion. She was actually laughing, said, nobody has ever come back to me, Mbemba, even government department, to say that, give us this area that we concentrate. I said, no, give us something that you want us to concentrate, which nobody is doing. So you actually giving them that assurance. And for the international NGOs also, this is what we are saying to them. We said, look, listen, we can partner, as Youssouf was saying, maybe a funding application can be one way of working together. Or if you know that you are something you are not able to do, you can pass that on to us. But if you are doing something, maybe we wouldn't actually do that. And for the international agency also is that. So I think that's how we were able to deal with it. But it's not an easy ride, to be honest. Because like some people will say that, hey, these guys coming from Ireland, and then they are probably coming with a money bag, and they are actually struggling. So you just have to build that confidence with them. But at the end of the day, no matter whoever is doing the work, in as much as development is actually working, people are actually getting out of poverty, and you are empowering people, because empowerment is not actually just a lip service. You need to actually get those people involved. And at some point, the capacity development we last did in the Gambia, funded by ADYFE, we went to women vegetable growers to tell us like what we were doing with the government, with other agencies as well. These women were telling us what we can do, instead of saying to them that this is what our organization is going to do. We went to them to say that, listen, we are just here. What's your problem? How can we work together? So I think this is where you actually build confidence. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, yes,
I would like them to come back.
Youssouf, before you come in, I saw that you put up your hand, and I thought, okay, I'd like to ask you a question. Then you will couple the two together. You will make your contribution, but also respond to my question. Probably my question is actually what you want to say. I meant to ask you, Mbemba said you also, I think, did mention that at the very beginning that development work is business, of course. Mbemba said they will not talk about money here, but at the end of the day, development work is business in that the people, the actors therein want to remain in the business of doing their work, of course. I want to come to you, Youssouf, and ask you, whereas it's not about business in terms of making profit, but we are talking about finances here. Finances are certainly involved, and Mbemba just said at one point Africa Center will have to move out, and the other, I mean, there has to be continuity ensured when Africa Center moves out. My question to you, Youssouf, would be, how do we move forward towards programs that are not only about financial support, but rather technical support, building capacity, and so on and so forth? I would like to hear your experience and your contribution, and then you can add on what you wanted to say.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. I like this question. You know, the last 2 months, people were asking me till we came up with a concept we call beyond remittances. Beyond remittances for ADYFE, it's like we evaluated or we assessed the contribution of the diaspora toward the continent, you know, in terms of capacity building that Mbemba was mentioning, in terms of technology transfer, in terms of coming and building, you know, solution for the continent, which could be more than remittances in terms of, you know, contribution within the continent. Beyond remittances concept means that we really need to guide our diaspora face for to see what they can contribute, you know, in terms of knowledge, in terms of technology, in terms of you know, peer-to-peer discussion to, you know, to leverage on all those competencies that will be needed in Africa in order to gap the bridge between, you know, the diaspora and in the continent. And another thing which is important, we need to understand the diversity among those international partners, you know. For example, I don't work much with NGOs working in Africa because the most important part for us is to convince, first of all, the national development agencies, European institutions and others to fund the diaspora organization here in order they can do their job in Africa, first of all. And then we do it through, not only through MOU for us is always the first step. And then we need a joint programs. Without joint programs, like Mbemba said, there is no exit strategy. A joint programs means that, okay, we have an MOU, we are going to build the capacity of 1 million young people, or we are going to build you know, a platform which can give access to goods or develop trade, whatever it is, but it will last 5 years. And after these 5 years, we need to come with a solution. This is what we did and we achieved it. This is very important for diaspora. Why are we doing that? It's because also we are tired of sending money every day. Why not helping to give them knowledge and capacities to be able to stand alone without diaspora? And then we can come as investors instead of, you know, remitting permanently. If some guys say, okay, you have access to market, you have that, why not investing a bit of money in my project? I know you can even be the partners in Europe and selling those products and services. We are talking about a creative industry nowadays, which is a huge sector as well that we can leverage on. Those topics are important. Beyond the NGOs, we work mostly with countries because the game is clear. The countries, sometimes national development agencies need really the development. The visions are clear and others. There is no hiding agenda behind. We work a lot with the CEDAW, which is the African Union, you know, to talk about the public-private partnership with diaspora. We added the word with diaspora, which means always like Mbemba, the mechanism they went through, saying the government, discussing with this needs to be operationalized everywhere. Each country needs to set up. Those are what we need from diaspora. These sectors, there is a gap here, there is a gap here, there is a gap here, and call on the diaspora. Why call on the diaspora? Gambia and Ireland are doing a great job, but there are other Gambians living in Austria, in Germany, and so on. How can they be part of this initiative as well? It's quite important. Without giving access to Africa Center or ADYFE to empower ourselves to have an office and doing it as a work, we cannot involve our diaspora in initiatives. The operationalization is the next step. And another step is, so far, even among ourselves, we really hardly come to like a strategic partnership, more than one project, you know, like 2 years, 3 years vision among ourselves. And we need to take these steps, you know, to see the partnership we want, to lobby together at the European level, first of all, to say, hey, if you want to be engaged with the diaspora, this is remittances, this is beyond remittances. How can we work together?
Mm-hmm.
And this methodology is quite important to understand, to discuss 1, 2, 3 times. And the last word, you have to understand that it's not something you will do in 1 year. Mbemba started since the dictator times, and now they are on. It means really 2 to 3 years is the time, the framework to develop a good partnership, you know, for just the next 3 or 5 years also. And
Patience.
After the trust, you need to renew it all the times again and again.
Patience is the key word here. And I like that, again, what the message is cutting across from the Gambia to Senegal, that diaspora organization activities contributing towards development need to be aligned with the national development programs of the country. And perhaps by so doing, you are already making it a little bit easier to penetrate the political bureaucracy, to show them that you are not diverting from their plans, and you help them to achieve their own plan. And after all, if we all agree that it's not about who takes the credit, but rather the end goal, the end vision, which is about development and improving lives, so you're not fighting with them.
So, sorry,
Abdihakim.
what's the last word before Hakim? Someone wrote about the political aspect. And what we are asking from the NGOs, you know, there are some are in development, some are really other. They have different goals. Our diaspora, we also need to understand that there are some diaspora interested in development and some are interested in political affairs. And we are development actors. We are not in politics. If you are in politics, you have to deal with the country. And all of us know how difficult it is. But it's really important to understand that we are talking about, you know, development perspective here, because our organization are non-political organization. So most of the time, the politics we talk about it is the diplomacy, how to collaborate and how to make sure that diaspora will be part of the development strategy of the country. So politics, I'm not sure that I am going to talk about this, because I also have the same issues in my country, but still, nevertheless, we are keeping going there, you know, providing solutions and make sure that things will work.
Good. I wanted to come to Abdihakim and ask you, we are talking about the issue of continuity here. What happens when you leave? What happens when something happens? No matter, be it a change of government or economical transition and so on and so forth. You've been in operation since 1998, yes. What is your plan in as far as continuity is concerned here? Where do you see HIRDA in Somalia taking forward the development strategy, the development journey, and PPP and communities and so on and so forth?
If coming back to Youssouf's point, saying that politics is not going to talk about politics, basically, yeah, we're not going to talk about politics, but politics usually comes into the organization sometimes, because politicians think that organizations, when they go there, they have a bunch of money so that they can give around and that sort of stuff. And when I come back to your question, meaning continuity, you know, we change with the political situation in Somalia, basically, how things evolve. We have to evolve also the way they evolve. And the most important thing when it comes to continuity is that we know that we're going to work with government, constitutional constraints. Basically, we have to adapt to that. We have to learn that. We have to work through that. The other thing is that building personal relationship, that's very important. What we have learned is that building personal relationship with people who are, whatever it is, let it be the international organizations we're working with, or the people who are back home in Somalia, the politicians, that sort of that, having personal relationships that they can work through the problems that we come against, basically, and trying to make smooth how to implement the projects and those sort of things. That's what we look into, and that try to involve with the situation day by day, basically.
Youssouf earlier on talked about his a bit of skepticism partnering with other partner organizations that are operating in different environments, like get Mbemba, who is operating as of now from the Gambia, and then Youssouf in Senegal, because his argument is that we are operating in two different environments. And I know my environment better than you do. But on the other hand, I would like to ask what the future looks like in terms of not just partnering with international organizations, but much as Youssouf knows his operational environment and I know mine, and we are talking about learning from each other here and exchanging experiences here, also bearing in mind that yes, the continent is not homogeneous, but some of our problems are similar in one way or another. And like you have already indicated here that that you can have, for instance, Youssouf's organization or Africa Center operating in Ireland, but we have Gambians scattered all over. How do we bring these people together? So I'm trying to figure out what, in your opinions, I would like to get your three different views. How do we merge? How do we partner with a Gambian diaspora organization in Germany, with Africa Center in Ireland and Belgium, bring this together? Because again, the vision here is about development. What are we doing as diaspora organizations scattered across Europe to come together for a common cause? What approach should we be looking at here? I start with you, Abdihakim.
I think basically the answer will be very short. We have adapted. Why we have adapted? Because it's to connect all those cultures and communities and the organizations together so that we can learn from each other. We try to connect with the Gambian from Ireland or Austria or wherever they are, basically. That's why we have adapted. And I think the best solution is to make, to let adapt grow and try to make the outreach bigger than it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Mbemba, can you give me your experience? I have one more question that is coming onto the chat, but I would like to hear your contribution on that one first.
Yeah, I think ADYFE is a platform that we definitely need to support to get this continue. But one thing that we have been doing the last few these last 2 years is with Youssouf. Actually, this year was a very interesting year for us. We had this Erasmus Plus with 6 ADYFE member organizations that the Africa Center led a project. And I think we need to have that multiplier effect, like to grow that, but also to see what kind of collaboration. Youssouf mentioned a collaboration between diaspora organizations. It's not actually happening at the moment. And I think ADYFE is a platform that is ready to facilitate that. So we need to look at ways how we can do that. But also, I think we definitely need to start a discussion on Youssouf. Like, it doesn't mean that me, a Gambian Africa Center, doesn't have to address the needs of the Gambians in Austria. Youssouf can do that. It's more of exchanging ideas how to address that. So we need to actually try and bring Africans together. You see, we need to leave all out. I think this probably will be another discussion on itself, because like as Africans, I think like Ireland is one of the great examples of that. People, there's a lot of power relations and then puzzles here and there. But like at the end of the day, we need to actually have one voice. That means whether it's about how we live in the country that we are in a peacefully, or how do we contribute to our countries of origin in order to effect development. So this is something I think should be our core vision as diaspora individuals or organizations.
Okay, on that note, I would like to bring in a question from the participants here. Quite a very interesting question. I don't know why it had skipped my mind. The question is, how do we deal with donor-funded initiatives that have a donor-driven agenda, but might probably not be aligned to national development programs? That's quite an interesting one. So we have donor institutions who have the money. I like to say we have Washington and Berlin, we have Geneva and Vienna, and these are big cities with big money. but we also have Dhaka and Kampala, and we have Addis Ababa, and I forget, Somalia is
Mogadishu.
Genau, exactly. And we have Mogadishu.
Yeah.
At the same time, we also have beyond Mogadishu, the small city in Maiduguri or wherever. I mean, this whole line of development actors, we have the village, we have the capital city, but we also have where the big money comes from. How do we align ourselves with this? Because each of us, they are probably in this line of, in this architecture of development actors, we all have in one way or another, probably different interests. How do we align that we are, our drive, our vision is, if it's within these donor initiatives?
The donor initiative. Mbemba, do you want to go or I should try?
I can go. Like Jen, you see, I think it's a very difficult question, but also there are ways to kill two birds with one stone. Sometimes donors might have money, and they sometimes it's very straightforward. Sometimes it's captured in buzzwords like gender empowerment, for example. They want to see that women are in leadership, women are active in politics, or they do ABCD, or sometimes it's actually towards challenging a cultural practice. So which might be an issue in a specific country. I would give an example. During the dictatorship in the Gambia, FGM is something that NGOs will not even talk about at some point. And then funders want to put their money in eradication of FGM. So very interestingly, the present vice president, they have an NGO called Gamco Trap. So they actually got away with so many things. Instead of actually talking about eradicating the practice, they were talking about cultural initiatives. It's just a change of language. By going to the people, you actually advocate for the banning of the practice, whilst you don't even mention the word itself. So this is what development is. And I think this also goes with development politics. Yeah. Youssouf was mentioning that we don't engage in party politics, but development politics is that you actually you satisfy the government, at the same time you bring on board the opposition leader, because at the end of the day, it's about developing the government. It's not about creating chaos. If it is about creating chaos, you need to avoid that. Yeah. So sometimes this is the way you actually manipulate it, but you have to place some politics in it. Yes, Youssouf.
I will take it from there. Thank you, Mbemba. This is the approach. But before, it was very difficult to match the need of the donor with the need of the organization. This was before people understood what they were meant to do with the money. You know, nowadays we have what we call the Sustainable Development Goals, which help us a lot to gather the main topics. All of us are okay with this. Yeah. And now, if you want to work with me, I am the donor. I have 4 points I want to reach, you know, through those development goals. And you have only one. You have to add your one, like one of the key, you know, indicator performances. You know, because it's the one bringing money. You will help him to reach his agenda while you added your points on it. So collaboration again, and putting, you know, those strategies together to make sure that by helping him to reach his goal, you also are contributing the way you wanted. This is very important. And Jen, there is a point I wanted to come on before. We are missing something in the diaspora. The operational part, institutionalizing institutions or organizations, first of all, and making sure that we have thematic area of work so that we can engage ourselves a lot and change experiences like this kind of panel. Seeing what's going on in Gambia, in Senegal, we are working also in Ethiopia till Ethiopia closed the door. We don't know what to do now. We are waiting for them to open again. Sometimes it can happen in Mogadishu or wherever. But how can we enhance this kind of collaboration between diaspora development actors to share knowledge, to share practices and others? It will be something, one day we'll just take some concepts from Gambia to Kenya, because it works well in Kenya, in Gambia, and so on. And this kind of collaboration we have it in diaspora because we never organize a project alone. ADYFE is against doing it alone because if you are doing it alone, you are not doing it well. The example was like 2 weeks ago, Mbemba, everyone in diaspora came to exchange with us to help us to be, to reach the objective we have. Because maybe we are more open and we are not country-focused organization, but how others organizations can take advantage of those knowledges around ourselves could be also another discussion. Mbemba, we should open maybe in the future to see how to help each other.
Thank you very much, Youssouf. Thank you indeed. From Germany, Netherlands. Yes, Youssouf, you are in Germany, right?
Austria.
Austria, okay. From Germany to Austria to Ireland and to the Netherlands, from Senegal to the Gambia. Sometimes I like to tease Mbemba that he belongs to Senegal. After all, he's just inside the Senegal there. Of course, I knew he was going to shake his head over there. And to Mogadishu and of course, Kampala. I would like to say thank you very much to all of you, my very competent panelists, for this very enlightening discussions. At the end of the day, we take home the point that partnering with international organizations or programs is still a learning process. We are still learning from each other, but it is certainly something that we as diaspora organizations need to take up to scale up our work. But at the same time, we should also be thinking of what's the way forward at one point or another. We also take home the point that it's not just about partnering for development. We mentioned here, we have two categories. We are also thinking about diaspora in as far as investment is concerned, diaspora in as far as social responsibility is concerned, but also diaspora in political arenas, something that we've not touched on here. At the end of the day, it's all about harnessing the potential of the diaspora and its contribution in developing the continent. Thank you very much, my panelists. Thank you very much, ADEPT, for putting together this great panel. And of course, the overall series that has been going on for a whole month. I think that everybody who has taken part in it has certainly learned so much. And I look forward to continued collaboration, continued exchange, and I hand over back to Marie.
Thank you so much, Jane. Yes, you can applaud her, definitely. Thank you very much to all of our three panelists as well. It was a very, very interesting and exciting discussion. Actually, I want to ask the attendees, and the panelists can also participate. There is a poll that I'm just launching now. You can see it, I believe. You can just give us your feedback in terms of how useful this exchange was for you. Thank you very much. Alors, voilà, nous arrivons donc à la fin de ce DDD. Je vais donc donner la parole au secrétaire général de ADEPT, Monsieur Emmanuel Kamdem, responsable de l'association Chiala. Emmanuel, je pense, pardon, est-ce que tu es présent? Tu peux enlever ton unmute, comme ça on va te laisser prendre la parole. Merci.
Oui. Alors, est-ce que tout le monde m'écoute? Merci beaucoup, Marie-Charlotte, tu m'écoutes?
Oui, on t'entend bien.
Ah ouais, voilà. Eh bien, bonjour tout le monde. C'est un honneur pour moi, au nom d'ADEPT aujourd'hui, de lire la déclaration de fin pour ce DDD. Et déjà, j'aimerais profiter de cette occasion pour féliciter les collègues qui ont organisé cet événement, ce DDD qui est très important pour ADEPT. Alors, déclaration du 13e dialogue sur le développement par la diaspora, le DDD 13. Les partenariats nécessaires pour augmenter l'impact de la diaspora en Afrique. Nous, délégués représentant les organisations de développement de la diaspora africaine et participant au 13e dialogue sur le développement par la diaspora, organisé par ADEPT en ligne les 24 et 25 novembre 2021, à l'occasion du mois de célébration de l'impact de la diaspora sur le développement en Afrique, le DIAC 2021. Se félicitant que le rôle joué par la diaspora dans le développement de l'Afrique figure dans l'acte constitutif de l'Union africaine, ayant à l'esprit qu'afin que l'agenda 2030 soit achevé, les partenariats multipartites avec la société civile sont encouragés à travers la cible des objectifs de développement durable ODD 17.17 pour stimuler des co-créations innovantes, considérant que les organisations de la diaspora africaine, partie prenante de la société civile en Europe, ont un rôle particulier du fait de leur double appartenance, ici et là-bas, dans la stratégie conjointe Afrique-Europe, espérant que lors du sommet Europe-Afrique de février 2022, une nouvelle stratégie conjointe Afrique-Europe donnant davantage de rôle à la diaspora pourrait être définie, notant que les relais locaux sont nécessaires pour assurer l'appropriation des solutions locales et construire des relations durables avec les autorités locales et les partenaires locaux, les partenaires financiers locaux, consciente que la réussite et la durabilité des actions de la diaspora seront meilleures si l'action s'insère dans un cadre de partenariat, notamment avec les autorités locales, tenant en compte que pour trouver de nouveaux partenaires, la visibilité et les opportunités de réseautage des ADOS sont essentielles, compétences devraient être développées le cas échéant. Reconnaissant que tout partenariat se base sur la transparence, la redevabilité mutuelle et la gestion des risques partagés, sachant que la professionnalisation est une étape nécessaire du passage à l'échelle et que l'augmentation du salariat au sein des ADOS est indispensable à la professionnalisation. Incitons l'inclusion des représentants de la diaspora dans les espaces de concertation en Afrique et en Europe. Demandons que soient mieux connues, valorisées et reconnues les pratiques d'investissement et de transfert de compétences de la diaspora. Recommandons que les chefs d'État de l'Union africaine et de l'Union européenne incluent les ADOS dans la future stratégie conjointe Afrique-Europe. Exhortons les associations de la diaspora à travailler de concert avec les acteurs locaux des pays et territoires d'intervention dans le cadre d'un accord de partenariat. Déclarons intensifier nos activités liées à l'augmentation des compétences et ressources des ADOS. Recommandons enfin une prise en compte des solutions issues de ce DDD dans le programme d'action d'ADYFE à soumettre aux bailleurs. Je vous remercie.
Un grand merci pour ces déclarations de fin de DDD. Merci beaucoup, Kamdem. Je vais à présent donner la parole au président d'ADEPT, M. Alexis Neuberg. Alexis, tu as la parole.
Merci, Charlotte. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, merci Kamdem, merci tout le monde. Je pense que la déclaration s'intègre dans le cadre des habitudes et traditions de nos DDD qui sont clôturées par une vision, même si on est en ligne. Donc, nous avons aussi les gens qui nous suivent en Facebook, dans les médias sociaux. C'est pour cela que cette déclaration devra être reprise pour justement être portée à la connaissance de beaucoup de personnes et surtout qu'elle devrait être clôturée par une signature ou approbation, ce qui n'est pas possible pour le moment. Ce 13e DDD prend fin. Le Covid nous a imposé de le faire en ligne, mais ça a aussi renforcé un des points les plus importants de notre programme, le réseautage, car plus d'une bonne quantité de personnes se sont retrouvées dans cette période de campagne, la technologie aidant. Et aussi, nous avons eu l'occasion d'échanger avec les différents acteurs dans notre programme de développement, de notre stratégie. L'implémentation des recommandations de ce DDD n'est pas pour moi un problème du tout, parce que c'est plutôt un soulagement, parce qu'il s'intègre dans notre plan stratégique qui est fondé depuis un certain temps sur 5 piliers, le professionnalisme, le plaidoyer, la visibilité, le soutien renforcement des qualités des ados, et puis la stabilité financière de notre adepte. Mais aussi, dans cette stratégie, nous avons aussi mis en place une commission qui est chargée du suivi des DDD. Et même, il y a une commission qui est chargée de l'observatoire des différentes évolutions de l'engagement de la diaspora en général. C'est pour cela que je suis très heureux que ce DDD et les résolutions sont vraiment les bienvenus, et ça va justement alimenter les réflexions et l'orientation d'adeptes d'ici à l'année prochaine pour finalement, comme je les ai entendus dans le dernier P2B, que justement il faut planifier à long terme, même stratégiquement. Alors, cette occasion pour moi est de dire merci. De dire merci d'abord à tous les panélistes et nos braves, compétentes modérateurs, modératrices. Donc, je dis justement merci aussi à tous les participants. Ce n'est pas facile. Il y en a ceux qui ont pris part à tous ces événements, même si c'est en ligne. Et justement aussi, merci beaucoup à notre équipe, à ADEPT, qui a travaillé, comme on l'a vu, comme ensemble, comme une équipe vraiment soudée. Et je pense que hier, nous avons eu l'occasion de voir les implications des uns et des autres. Nous avons eu les points forts de ce DDD qui seront présentés demain lors de la clôture à 16h, 16h30 à peu près. Nous aurons encore demain le dernier événement de notre mois d'impact, c'est la conférence de la jeunesse. Donc, je vous appelle, et tous ceux qui nous écoutent pour le moment, qui nous voient même en ligne, de continuer à nous être fidèles jusque demain à partir de 10h avec le Youssouf. Alors, à 16h, 16h30, il y aura la conclusion générale. Nous allons avoir l'occasion de revenir sur tout ce qui s'est passé depuis le 2 mai jusqu'à demain, après le Youssouf, et en espérant que toutes les conclusions de tous les événements vont constituer, comme on vient de le dire dans la déclaration, un plan de programme d'adeptes. Alors, je déclare clos le 3e DDD, et je saisis cette occasion, malgré le froid, de sortir, prendre un punch ici en Autriche, c'est comme on appelle, prendre quelque chose de chaud, et puis pour que justement demain, demain nous soyons au rendez-vous pour la jeunesse. Mais entre-temps, le réseautage continue, donc en physique, en parallèle, etc. Marie-Charlotte, à toi la parole, et mes salutations à toute l'équipe. Donc, j'espère qu'on se reverra d'ici peu.
Merci beaucoup Alexis pour ce beau discours. En effet, le DDD donc, est clôturé, mais demain, nous avons le Diaspora Youth Talk qui commence à 10h du matin, et on vous donne rendez-vous pour le concours de pitch qui aura lieu dès demain matin. Merci aux participants dans le chat. Je vois Barbara Rossi qui félicite l'équipe d'Adeptes. En effet, beaucoup de travail, bravo à l'équipe et merci à tout le monde. Voilà, donc nous vous laissons sur ces notes. Je ne sais pas s'il y a des échanges que vous voulez continuer à avoir. C'est vrai que la salle va rester ouverte quelques minutes. Si vous avez des questions, vous voulez des contacts ou laisser des contacts, prendre contact avec Adeptes, potentiellement, c'est une possibilité. Merci et à demain alors pour la suite du programme. Bonne soirée.